Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. It's great to have you with us. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Always great to have you all. And we have a special guest with us this episode. His name is Dave Brat. You know him from Congress. He was a legendary figure in Congress when he toppled a very powerful incumbent named Eric Cantor and was kind of a shot across the bow for the rise in populism in the Republican Party. But he's also very brilliant. He's got a PhD in economics. And now he's a senior executive at Liberty University, which is the flagship evangelical university in the entire country. So, Dave Brat, welcome to Practically Political.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right to it, Dave. I'll have to specify which Dave because I got my Daves here. Dave Brat,
Good.
What's your take on what happened? I was pleasantly surprised to see Marjorie Taylor Greene step down from Trump. Well, actually, she tried to do it. She ended up trying to do it, even though Trump asked her not to do it. She went ahead and did it. But she got rejected by some Democrats. Why did the Democrats give a reprieve to Speaker Johnson, but not to his predecessor? That's what I was so confused about.
Yeah, I know. That's a little. McCarthy had a little longer pedigree with them and did some stuff they didn't like with Trump, and they perceived that he didn't keep his word a couple times, whereas Johnson was fresh. And I was in the Freedom Caucus, and so I'm highly sympathetic to that team. But even that team is a bit fractured right now. And, unfortunately, it's the politics of it gets covered, right? The dramatic stuff. But what never gets covered is, the $7 trillion government budgets, the $2 trillion deficits, the endless wars, the inflation, the border invasion. And the Republicans just plod on and keep doing the same old. And there's never any discipline from the people. And if you poll the people, they have very different views than the members. And so that's a problem in our republic right now.
Yeah, and I would also just add that I think McCarthy's problem was that, as you said, Congressman, he wasn't trusted on either side, but also after making a deal with Democrats and trying to build a little trust with them, and he goes on the media and just trashes everybody.
Right.
And I think that was the final straw. And as far as Mike Johnson goes, I think it was 359 votes. I mean, it wasn't even, I think only 30 Republicans voted to support it. So I think part of it is Democrats have been pleasantly surprised with Mike Johnson. And certainly I was very pleasantly surprised with the whole Ukraine thing, though it took way too long. But I think also they realize that they don't want to have another bleep show in an election year, and it's going to be a stretch to hold the House. Carrie has heard me say, I predict that the Democrats will lose the House. I mean, lose the Senate, but will regain the House. And obviously, the worst nightmare for Democrats is having a trifecta, right? We kind of been there, done that. I'm not a Democrat, but that's what they're saying. So I think that was really the main issues.
Yeah, I'll just add one other thing that a lot of people don't realize about the Republican conference, right? It's like 220 Republicans. And since Gingrich had a contract where we ran on something, and that's why he was consequential. Now the speaker on the Republican side, we're always weak. We have a one-member advantage right now, and they let 220 people go run on their own thing. Right, which is just absurd. So, you got a New Yorker Republican and an Illinois Republican and a Texas Republican with different philosophies. We never get the surge. The Democrats are very disciplined. They run in lockstep, and they really discipline their members hardcore. But that's what accounts for the chaos and why our side is always so scared of everything. I wish we would unify between, like Gingrich did, 380% issues and run on them. But it never happens.
That would make too much sense, Dave.
Right, way too logical.
Well, and also let's not forget that Nancy Pelosi had the exact same majority that Kevin McCarthy did, and she passed over 300 bills. She had the speakership lined up before there was. She even before January, before Inauguration Day came along. So it shows if you have an efficient speaker, whatever you think of Nancy Pelosi and her policies. It can it can also be done. I think Johnson's one
Right.
mistake, just to finish up on this topic, was that they need to change this rule where a single member can present a motion to vacate, because it just means that the speaker is walking on eggshells constantly, and it gives these obstructionists. Let's face it, okay, the Matt Gaetzes, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Paul Gosars, these folks aren't interested in governing. They're interested in obstructing, and that's why I think they'd actually be happier in the minority.
I disagree with you entirely on that one. They're obstructing what as I just said, we have $2 trillion deficits, endless wars. We're now in the middle of 3 or 4 wars. 4 years ago, we had none. We have a border invasion. The mayors of Chicago and New York, Democrats, are saying you're ruining my city. And the 30 or 40 are saying we got to end this stuff. And the Uniparty is saying, what? I don't see anything. Whoop, I don't see anything here. And so I don't think they're obstructing. I think they're leading on the issues of the day that the American people care about in the polls. That's not obstruction.
Well,
that's governing.
No, we will get to the border. Don't worry. But my point is, it's one thing to oppose, okay? But what's one meaningful piece of legislation that those people have suggested, Congressman, or that they proposed to deal with these issues? There's been nothing.
Yes. No, there's a reason for that. That's because the speaker has become a king. The speaker, it's like the military. Our guys think they're going through the ranks, and you got to obey the 4-star general. That is not it. You're supposed to obey your people. The reason I was in Congress, they wouldn't let me put a bill in. They won't. The speaker controls all legislation, right? We were paying $40 billion to dead people. I went to Paul Ryan and said, hey, can we maybe save $40 billion we're paying to dead people? No, can't do it. Right. And so, I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, well. So, Congress, is it safe to assume that you are supporting Donald Trump in this year's presidential election?
Yeah, and I always tell everybody the 3 issues: endless wars, debt, border invasion. I don't care what their name is. Anybody that supports those, for me, it's not about party or whatever. It's solve those 3 problems.
Well, we will.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
Dave Brat, so on the debt issue, so we just had the report this week from both the Social Security trustees and the Medicare trustees.
Yeah.
Terrible prognosis. They're going to go bankrupt. And I'm upset because Donald Trump's not willing to take this on. And so if that's one of your issues is the debt, why is Donald Trump not doing something about it?
And that's one of the reasons that he got elected in 2016, by the way, because he was the first Republican candidate who said, I'm not going to touch entitlement.
Right.
Good politics, but not good budget strategy.
Right. No. Yeah. Well, and that's the answer. And fighting against the Democrats is like fighting against Santa Claus, right? They're never ending gifts to the American people. It's like the expansion. There's a right to everything. I think the United Nations now has over 2,000 rights. We have a right to everything with no corresponding responsibility. We have an opt-out generation in the workforce who says, I just don't even feel like working. And we got smart guys at Harvard who I like are who are proposing a negative income tax on top of the welfare state for the people who are opting out of the economy. And the Democrats say, we want a bigger government. And then they're critical of fascism, which is a big government. And so, I mean, don't get me started. But yeah, Social Security and Medicare are all bankrupt. They're going to have to crash, it looks like, before the Democrats will do anything on those.
Or the Republicans.
Because I in 2014, to my credit, and I will toot my horn, ran on those 2 issues. And I got clobbered by my own party and the Democrats. Right. The Democrats accused me of wanting to murder people. I don't want to murder people. I'm a Presbyterian. I'm high order.
Well, listen, no, I agree. First of all, by the way, the most profligate 4 years in the history of the expansion of our debt were under Donald Trump, even more than Biden. So the old saying, that's true. You can look it up, Congressman. But anyway, but anyway, there's the old saying, which Carrie has heard me say, all politicians like to spend money. The Democrats just admit it. And if you go back over the last, really since Carter, when has government spending, the deficit, and government employment gone up the most? Under Republican administrations. So I find it a little disingenuous.
Let's just stick with the one, because facts
is only an
are.
issue. Hold on, this is only an issue
No,
when
the
Democrats
facts
are in power. Then all of a
Okay, good.
sudden, Republicans become these spending hawks. But when Trump
No,
was around, it was a blank check.
Yeah, you're wrong on that. Trump had a bridge, but in his last year, because of COVID, when all the Einsteins up in D.C. decided to shut down the entire economy, might be a good idea there to have a bridge. I probably wouldn't even like that part. Now, without COVID, Biden is running $2 trillion to $2.5 trillion deficits every single year after COVID, where we shelled out checks to every person and every business. So on the facts, you're dead wrong there. The deficits under Biden dwarf Trump, and they're continuous minus COVID. And now we're at World War II debt to GDP levels, right? As a percentage of GDP. That was not the case under Trump. So the stats, you got to go check those out.
We'll just agree to disagree on that one, but I would encourage our viewers to look it up. I mean, again, under Barack Obama, his first term, you had the slowest increase in government spending since Eisenhower.
Yeah. This is where I'll have charts. Yeah. You come with your charts next time, okay, for debt and deficits, and I do this every day.
All right,
and you're flat out wrong, and rhetoric don't make you right.
Reagan started it anyway, but we'll go on. So let's just talk about the border, because this is because this is an issue that, again, when Barack Obama left office, border crossings were at a 50-year low. That was one of his, look, I have my issues with Obama, but that was one of his most unheralded successes. He deported over 4 million people. He was the deporter in chief. He could get away with it. He was a Democrat. Like so many issues, Trump, he went after good and bad immigration. So we have a situation now where our back door is too open and our front door is too closed. We're not issuing nearly enough H-1B visas, only 500,000. We could issue a couple of million easily. But anyway, the point is that James Langford, one of the most conservative members of the Senate, he came up with a bill that almost every Republican said was the best border bill we were ever going to get. It didn't ask for amnesty for the Dreamers. It didn't ask for a path to citizenship the way most of these border bills do. But Donald Trump blew it up because he wanted to have a political advantage by a chaotic border. Now, the issue is the Democrats deserve some blame for this, because if I were running Biden's campaign, I would have him down on the border every day saying, this is how we were going to deport people, but Donald Trump blocked it. This is how we were going to reform our asylum system, but Donald Trump blocked it. This is how we were going to do this. So will you at least acknowledge that Donald Trump blew up the best border bill we've had in a long time, according to the most conservative members of the Senate?
According to the Senate, never made it to the House for a very good reason, because I ran on that issue also. And there were no net improvements to immigration enforcement. There was more money to allow them to process more people. If Biden can end it right now with an executive order, right? All of this border, it's 10 million new people under Biden alone. 10 million under Biden alone. That's the facts. He can end it because he started it. They want to get the folks in for votes. He's already processing the votes for them, right? And so, again, you can go back to other cases and talk about other presidencies. Right now, there's a border invasion. Biden won't go down there. They won't address the issue. The Republicans are also complicit, and the senators have to run statewide, and that's why they're more complicit, because all the billionaires who own the Senate and the House are cheap labor crowd folks, right? All of our big donors on the conservative side want cheap labor for efficiency, but they don't have to pay the education costs. 90% of education costs are state and local. An illegal comes in, they have 2 kids, that's $40,000 a year in taxpayer expense just for education. So the guy coming in, they're all created in the image of God. He makes 20 grand, but he's net negative 40. Math doesn't work out. So that's my short take.
Okay, well, first of all, again, this is another one, as Casey Stengel said, you can look it up, but illegal immigration is actually a net zero in terms of cost, because the education and healthcare costs that you talk about are wiped out by the cheap labor cost. And I agree, that's why we haven't had a serious immigration policy, is that the Republicans want the cheap labor, Democrats want the votes, but it's turning out that the vote thing is a little more complicated as you look at particularly some of the working class Latino voters and where they're going. But still, the bottom line is this was a very positive border bill on a lot of fronts, and Trump blew it up for political reasons. You know, you can argue about the merits of the bill. And that really leads me to my next question. This is a question.
Well, hang on right there. On the economics, you have to take in the full costs and benefits, right?
I am.
No, you're not. Because illegal immigration is such a net negative. What you're doing is replacing the American worker, right? All net new jobs over the last year are part-time jobs. All net new jobs were part-time. The full-time jobs are negative. All net new jobs over the last 4 years have gone to alien workers, foreign-born workers over the last 4 years. So you're displacing the inner city and the low-skilled workers in America with cheap labor. Now, the full cost, you tell me what the number is, how many billions it takes care of when everybody goes on drugs, when all the kids in the inner cities are illiterate at the 4th grade level, 40% illiteracy, 90% in Manhattan. What's the full social cost of that? No economist will touch that with a 10-foot pole because the foundations.
Well, you're conflating two different issues there. But putting that aside, the bottom line is that illegal immigrants create crimes or commit crimes at a much lower rate than Native Americans do. They also are harder workers, and a lot of the jobs that are filled. Look, if you want to pick strawberries in 110 degree heat, go for it. Most people don't want to do that. And if you look particularly after COVID, if we'd had a good immigration policy, we could have filled all these temporary jobs. There was a huge shortage of workers. And that's what having a good immigration policy allows you to do. It allows you to bring temporary workers over to fill the shortfalls. But Carrie, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah. Well, there's a shortage of workers because a lot of kids are in their parents' basements with headphones playing video games. It's called the opt-out generation, and the workforce participation is down, and the Biden economists are working on a 4-day work week. The way to get the workers back in the workforce for cheap wages is not to give them welfare. There's a surprising correlation between starvation and wanting to work, right? That's called the good old days. These days, there's a free lunch for everybody at a Democrat voting booth near you. And until we end that, everything does go bankrupt.
Well, if you think people want to live high on the hog on $400 a month or whatever it is, then that's fine. I don't agree with that. But go ahead, Carrie.
I'm just here eating popcorn, watching this.
It's a great debate. It's really fun to have you on, Congressman.
Well,
no, it's good.
I told Dave Brat, usually we have people who are to the left of me, so it's nice to have somebody to my.
I like being ganged up on. This is fun.
No, I want to ask more of a tactical question for Dave Brat from what you've been hearing, because I know you're really plugged in with the grassroots. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's very involved in Pennsylvania politics, and she was saying during the primary that they just had that the ratio of mail-in ballots for Democrats versus Republicans, she said it was like 2 or 3 to 1. And you're talking, I think maybe they had like 2 months lead time to mail in their ballots. And the Republicans, unfortunately, are giving this message of, oh, just do paper balloting, no machines, and show up only on election day. Well, even despite your best efforts and your best intention, maybe 10% won't even show up because they had an emergency with their children or their pets or whatever. They don't make it. Even if 100% of them came, you still can't make up with 2 or 3 months or however much it is of all this mail-in balloting. So do you think that this will really hurt Republicans here heading into November? And do you think that Trump should be more vocal about supporting early voting, since that's the rules have changed? You can complain about the rules, but don't hate the players, hate the game. Either you change the rules, which they haven't done, or you're gonna keep losing. But what's your read on that?
Yeah, I think Trump has started to move in that direction a little bit because of the logic you just laid out. And so, the comparison there is, Nancy Pelosi, those guys come ready to rumble. And we got Mike Johnson and a bunch of Christian Cub Scouts, And, we follow the rules and and we have these challenges. But this issue is so simple, right? If anyone just really believes in democracy or the republic or whatever, you just verify all the votes very carefully. If the state has signature verification, you go through. Why are people scared of doing that? That's the issue that no one before. If you ask that question, you're a fascist again, right? Anytime if you're a Republican, if you ask a question, the deep state folks, according to Mike Benz, we changed the legislation in 2018 so that tweets became mini cyber events, and so that was now handled by the border security folks, and gave them the authority to ban 22 million tweets having to do with elections or virology issues, right? COVID. And so that's what happened last time. 22 million tweets down. That's just one example. And that's all verified. So we need to, if everybody is good with the truth, then let's air the truth out, right? And it should all go to courts and just verify all the votes, and we're all fine.
Yeah, and again, that's what's been done. Though I have to say, for a party that's behind Donald Trump, to hear anyone pontificate about obeying the rules is a little rich. But putting that aside, I do think if you look at the races in Georgia, the Senate certainly could have been in Republican hands if Donald Trump hadn't bashed on mail-in voting so far. Because let's forget, right? David Perdue got 49.7% of the vote in that general against John Ossoff, or in the jungle primary, if you will. And then fewer people voted in the primary than in the general, and then the general than the primary, and fewer people voted in the runoff than they did in the general. And that was because of Trump bashing on mail-in voting. I think, again, you want to have the most possible people vote. If you look at states that do all mail-in voting, like Oregon and Colorado, there's no fraud. There's no fraud in general. And that really asked me one question, because you seem, you're a very educated and a pragmatic guy in a lot of ways, Congressman. But do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen?
I believe that there were so many irregularities and so many court challenges which were not allowed, and so many voices that were canceled at that time, and that the mainstream media's monopoly on the coverage back then, and their cancellation of all conservatives who wanted to have that debate, makes me scratch my head quite a bit.
Well, let me refine the question. Do you think there was enough?
I don't have knowledge.
Do you think there was enough potential fraud to change the outcome? Because
sure. Oh yeah.
So you really think that Donald Trump would be president if all the fraud claims that you say weren't processed or addressed had been addressed?
Well, I'd like to add them all up, right? The burden is on me there was a ton of fraud, right? There were 3 times more ballots sent out than voters.
I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you. That was a point that Doug Burgum tried to make, and that's BS. What was happening is ballot applications that were sent out. People get 2 or 3 applications, and then they send in one of those applications to get their one real ballot. So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is just typical of the subterfuge that so many Republicans are using to try to kowtow to Trump.
Well, getting back to the question you asked me, is you only needed about 10,000 votes in several of these key states. And there were so many, the Zucker bucks.
44,000 in 3 states.
Let me finish a point here so I could spit out my point. But these Zucker bucks, it's just curious that they just magically happen to be distributed in the 7 key states in the Democrat key precincts. And now on the left, right, with the Republicans, we used to be these country club guys. I certainly never was one. But now all the magnificent 7 trillionaires are on the left, and some of them are working some nonsense, and then they own the big news networks online, et cetera. And there's no doubt that happened. And so how do you score that in retrospect? It's hard to do. But do I think that all those added together would come up to 10,000 votes per state? Yeah.
Okay, well, all I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to Carrie, but Chris Cobb, who before he was fired, of course, said from the Trump administration that this was the safest and most secure election that we've ever had, and it's really sad because we should have given ourselves a collective pat on the back for not only running such a safe, secure election, but having record turnout in the middle of the worst pandemic.
Yeah, well, that's okay, years. But 60 to 70% of the voters in polls do not share that confidence. He said it when, and any guy that said that was part of the Trump administration. Where are they working now? Right? I want to know
70% of Republicans, not of voters.
Where's he working now? The guy you just mentioned.
Well, he got fired. But anyway,
yeah. Now, where's he working now? I mean, when people make comments like that, it's always curious, right, where they end up with a nice contract.
Well, so where was he working? But anyway,
yeah. Where was he working? Where's he working now? And then the polling doesn't match your description. The American people are very unsettled with this election business, and we could go on. It's not worth it. It's just
okay.
Well, the easiest way is to move forward and count all the votes in public. And put them in front of the judges. Then if we both agree on that, there's no more issues going forward.
I agree with that. Dave Brat, one thing you also mentioned I think is important, and I think we got to wrap soon, but the media, I think, completely failed. And you actually look at polling about the Hunter Biden story, the laptops.
Yeah.
It was determinative. People said that it would have swayed their vote against.
Yes, I know.
Biden if that story had been true, or I'm sorry, if it had been allowed to be. You had this. I think it was misinformation. You had dozens of intelligence experts say this had the classic fingerprints of Russian disinformation, and that was a complete lie. And the polls show that was determinative in terms of it swayed the outcome. Because it wasn't given the actual credence that it needed.
Yeah. And I try not to just go overtly into the political things, but you get guests on this. Look at Trump, surely Trump, but the same spokespeople forget to mention we had Russiagate for 3 years, which was determinatively false. And of course, Rachel Maddow's head was popping off on Russiagate for 3 years in a row. All the crimes that were committed. Nothing about 51 national security advisors of high repute and esteem signed their name to a document that was a lie. We got Burisma, we got China checks. Right. I mean, I could go on and on with the politics. It's never ending. Hopefully the American people just start voting in both sides, people who tell the truth again. But that seems to be a lot to ask.
Well, I would just say that again. I think that the Russia. The connections between the Trump administration and Russia during the campaign were exaggerated, but they were not non-existent. So I don't think it was a hoax. But I'd also say that Trump turned out to be Putin's puppet when he was in office. So I think it was certainly a harbinger of what was going to happen.
No, it's much more brilliant, as Biden has done, to drive Russia straight into the arms of China and Iran. Now, boy, that's some geopolitics. That's a genius right there. So it's like if you break that up, then you love Putin and you're a fascist or something. I mean, it's just ridiculous on its face.
He took Putin over the side of his own intelligence agency. I mean, the list goes on and on. He's never criticism.
On
Putin,
what?
Putin wouldn't have had to invade Ukraine if Trump had been president because he was getting everything that he wanted. Trump was on the way to dissolving NATO. He never criticism.
Yeah.
He coddles dictators.
Ukraine, I have 2 data points for you. The United States, who's in favor of democracy, ran a coup d'etat on Ukraine in 2014. Oops, not too good for the theory there, right? Just followed John Mearsheimer, Chicago, the greatest geopolitical guy of our times on all the history of Ukraine. Second data point is 2022. Putin put down a peace plan and NATO walks away, led by the United States of America. So all we've done is annihilated young Ukrainian men, and now the women are being shoved into the charnel house. And over what? Over the fact that the Ukrainians could have got rich. They were a democracy. They were fine. But the U.S. wanted to shove them right up against Russia so we could have a NATO ally there for our purposes to achieve what?
There was
I
never
don't
any
know, a lot
serious
of death.
talk about admitting Ukraine to NATO. I mean, that Biden had never said that, and also
Well, then why?
I'm hearing
What was it about?
rationalizing to invade a sovereign country, upset a
Why did
world
they
order that
invade a
existed
sovereign
for
country?
75 years.
Yeah.
Might
Why did they
triumphs over
invade
right.
a sovereign country? Putin told you, you're not going to have a NATO member and a Euro member up against Russia. We wouldn't want that up against the United States and Mexico, would we? No,
I
we have this
agree,
thing called the Monroe
this
Doctrine.
is I think a BS talking point where people say that Biden was pushing Ukraine NATO membership. He was not. But anyway,
The United States was under him and still are, and prosecuting a war that's slaughtering the young kids in Ukraine.
So
For what?
the
The
war
war's already
the war
over.
is more the U.S.'s fault than Russia's fault?
The lead up to it and the geopolitical errors were the fault of the U.S. Right now, if you say Russia could have rolled over Ukraine in 5 seconds, right? But they're the Slavic people. They don't want to kill them. They have to live there in that neighborhood.
Russia
right?
also has a very much more inept army than people thought, which was shown. I don't think that it was done out of the good of people's hearts. But Carrie, I'll give you the last word.
The point is, it's over. It's been over for 2 years.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that they have to form a peace agreement, and yet for some reason, DOD and the arms guys and whatever are all pleading for more money and more. There's nothing more inefficient to economic growth than going and blowing up a bunch of bombs. And there's nothing worse for our moral outlook than killing a bunch of young people. So I'm a no.
So you would have voted against giving more aid to Ukraine?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Carrie?
For the moral reason alone of when you go to war and you go to kill people, you better have a real good reason. What's your reason for killing the young kids over there? What's your answer?
Well, ask Putin and ask the people in Poland who, if he's allowed to roll into Kyiv, are going to be next.
That's a joke. Yeah, right. He's going to roll into Poland. No,
I'm just saying that they're justifiably scared. Okay, and they may know things that we don't.
Well, I'd like to know what they are. This mystery game is getting a little boring at the expense of the American taxpayer.
All right, Carrie, I'll give you the last question and the last word, but this has been a great conversation.
It's a going, Dave.
I think this might be our longest podcast that we've ever had. So this has been very lively. I haven't gotten much words in edgewise, but Dave Brat, you've said everything, most things that I would say anyway. So it's just kind of nice to let you do my work.
Amen.
I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the dialogue. I think it's important for us to have this.
It is
within the
it is. And Congressman, the one thing that's great about this show, everything is always done with a smile around here.
Yes.
We always go after the argument, never the person. Yep. And if people did that throughout our system, it would be so much more functional.
Well, I think you're an old liberal, and I used to have lunch with 100 liberals.
No, I'm a Rockefeller Republican. I'm not an old
I'm
liberal.
a liberal too. When I was getting ready to give you a compliment. I can tell you're not a Marxist, so that's the good news.
Thank you.
No, I think he was trying to say you're a classical liberal, which is what I do.
Yes.
And then like you believe in free inquiry, you believe in truth, and you believe in open dialogue. That's what a classical liberal is, and that's what
I think it's socially more liberal, fiscally more conservative. And today, the Republican Party has gone the opposite way in both areas.
Well, I'm no proponent of the Republican Party. I'm a proponent of the Judeo-Christian tradition. And so if you just pursue the truth over the long run history and the trajectory, that history has plenty to teach us, and we're way off course, in my view. We got to get back to our roots.
Well, I think we definitely need to get back to some kind of roots. That is a great way to end. Congressman, it's been such a pleasure. I hope you'll come back.
Anytime.
And, it really is
Carrie,
fun.
next time you got to yell at one of us more.
Yeah, come on, Carrie. You're gonna have to get up my craw more.
I think
he can't do it alone.
No, I'll bring charts. I'll bring charts next time.
Okay, excellent. You be our Steve Ratner.
Perfect.
But in any case, all right, folks. Well, that does it for another episode of Practically Political. We thank the Congressman, and we thank all of you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. We'll catch you all next time.